Welcome to Channel Y. I'm your host, Pankaj Monga, and with me today we have Daneshvar Rohintan from IE Financial. He's the Vice President for Portfolio Management. So Dan, welcome to
Thank you
Channel
for
Y.
having me. Thank you.
Dan, I will start straight away because you are managing so much money for many people. So tell us about 2023. We are at the end of 2023. So what happened the whole year and how you will describe everything?
So it's been a really interesting year, Pankaj. It's been basically two halves. So the first 6 months of the year is very different than the last 6 of the months of the year that we've seen. So I'll start with the first 6 months of the year. In the first 6 months, what did we start with? In January, everyone thought there was going to be a recession. Everyone thought the high interest rates were going to hurt the economy, hurt investors. And then what happened in February, March, April? Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, First Republic Bank, Credit Suisse. We're global investors, right? The world is interconnected. In the world, the biggest event of February, March, April was Credit Suisse facing billions and billions of dollars of redemptions every single day. And then UBS came in with the force of the Swiss government, forcing them to buy Credit Suisse. What did the Federal Reserve do? They created brand new, what was known as the Bank Term Funding Program. That was to help save Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic Bank, and Signature Bank. So much happened in the banking world, and it only felt to confirm what the recession, the high interest rates crowd was saying to start the year. But then the summer happened. And then in the back half of the year, what happened? The economy remained resilient, unemployment remained resilient, inflation started coming down. And then what are investors saying today as we're ending the year? They're talking about high interest rates getting cut. Next year, the Federal Reserve is expected to cut 6 times. My personal opinion is that doesn't tend to happen outside of bigger corrections and bigger issues. So the market is ending the year on an optimistic note. They're ending the year with unemployment at record lows, economy that remains at record highs, inflation that's coming down, and the biggest shock in the financial system since the financial crisis turned out to be okay. The tools worked. The shotgun marriage between UBS and Credit Suisse worked. UBS's stock is up 50% since that event. If you had said to someone in March, an investor, a bank investor, that was going to happen, they would have said you're crazy. So we live in a twilight zone where we had two halves that are so diametrically opposed from one another. But here we are. 2023 ended off on a positive note. Growth had one of the best years since 1999. The QQQ, which is just a rough barometer for the NASDAQ that I use, it's a QQQ is the biggest ETF that covers the big tech stocks. It's up 55%. The market's up 25%. Interest rates remain at 5.25% in the United States. So we are in the peak soft landing, twilight zone right here, right now.
So what you explained, so first half was bad, and we might have learned from 2008 recession that we need to save some banks.
The funny thing is, I don't think regulators get a lot of credit. We always complain and say the Fed is always too late to the party, they cause the next recession, things like that. And there's we could spend 5 shows on this, but there's reasons why that happens. But what happened this time when they learned from the lessons of 2008, 2009, and they aced this test. They got an A+++. Because what do? They know that liquidity, they know that financial conditions are important in the economy. So when they started to feel strain because of these bank failures, they had the entire toolkit for how to fix it. The Bank Term Funding Program, which is really what I'm getting at, is one of the most specific financial instruments that I think I've ever seen a government develop. And one thing I don't usually say is that it worked effectively and exactly as proposed. And we're here today because it was a success story. So the regulators deserve credit. They did a great job.
So in this environment, how you design your portfolio, like what do you think, like what to buy, how to, like longer run, short term? What is your mix actually? What do you do there?
So 100% of what we do is the long term. The reason we say that is we spend so much time researching these companies, all this effort, understanding the suppliers, understanding the customers. If we sold the stock next week, say it went up 5%, we sold it next week. Did we really spend all that time wisely? No. Say we sold it 2 months later. Did we, and it's up 10%. Was it an efficient use of our time? No. You want to find companies that are very strong, very robust, and you want to own them for 3, 4, 5, 10 years. So 100% of what we do is always long-term investing. And then the question you're probably asking, and I'm going to get in front of it, is there's thousands of stocks. How do you get to 30, 40 stocks that come in a diversified portfolio like what we manage? It really comes down to finding the best companies in the value chain. So a lot of the work we do is saying start to finish, and I'll use an example because illustrations and case studies are important. So I grew up in Whitby, Oshawa, right around the border. The biggest employer in town was the GM plant. 50,000 people used to work there at their peak. And my parents were actually in the automotive industry indirectly working for one of the suppliers. So this whole time, I'll use the auto supply chain because you start at the very beginning. The steel actually mill itself, the Profascos, the US Steels, those companies, you start at the steel mill. Then you go to the auto parts suppliers. Think of your Magnas, your American Axles, your Aptives. And then you go to how the car is actually put together. That's your Toyota, that's your Kia, that's your GM. Then, when you buy a car, where do you go? You go to a car dealership. How much money do they make? When you need a car, when you need to buy a car, you're probably actually getting a loan from a bank. So we look at the auto lenders. After that, a few years go by. You need a tire change, you need an oil change, maybe one door fell out. You go to a car repair shop. 10 years go by, the car's lost 2 doors, the engine doesn't work, you try to fix it yourself. Those are the auto parts retailers. And then finally 15 years have gone by, because that's the average age before scrapping, you go to the junkyard companies. You look at all those companies, there's hundreds of them in there, and you find the ones that are the most profitable. And the part that surprised me, after spending so much time actually just living next to a giant GM facility, is how little money General Motors makes. General Motors barely makes any money compared to the guys that sell you replacement wipers at auto parts retail. And the junkyard makes more money than General Motors. So when we look at what to invest in automobiles as a whole, we focus on the O'Reillys, the AutoZones, the Genuine Parts Co's, which owns Napa. That's the name that you're probably more familiar with. And the junkyard companies. So next time you see a junkyard, chances are you'll see LKQ. Those are the companies that you focus on, if you even want to invest in cars in the first place. So we always look across the value chain. We do it globally. So when you see different countries, they're good at different things. Germany has great car companies, but the cars are becoming more like computers today. We have more Teslas, we have more, well, there's Chinese brands that I wasn't going to bring up because here it's mostly Teslas.
Yeah.
But where did the semiconductors come from?
People buy those Chinese cars share here also.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Sorry.
The Xpengs of the world and all that.
Yeah.
But when you look at just semiconductors, which are taking over more of the car, you go to Taiwan for that. You go to Japan for that. You go to parts, actually there's one company in France that does that. But a lot of them are in the United States. So you go to where the competitive advantage is, you go to the most profitable parts of a value chain, and the key is think about it for 5, 6, 7 years. Your goal when you're investing in the market is not today, not tomorrow, it's when you retire. So have a 30-year plan and only trade when you have to, not because you want to.
So do you use some AI in these kind of things or not?
You know what's funny? It's the AI conversation is something that's come up. Basically, it feels like it came out of nowhere, but that's not true. What actually happened was this has been going on year in, year out. And I'll give you an example. When you go on YouTube, is the feed more accurate and more like what your tastes actually are? than it was 10 years ago? Yes. Sorry, I'm
Definitely.
answering for you.
No,
But definitely.
definitely.
Same for Netflix. Are the Netflix recommendations getting better? They have been since the start Netflix was formed. So what's happening with AI is that it was in the background. The term for it before it got the AI term was called high performance computing. NVIDIA was selling these chips for many years, Broadcom, all these companies were doing this work in the background. And then what came along? ChatGPT 4. We don't talk about ChatGPT 3, but we should. It shows you the step function improvement in this technology. GPT 3 failed all the exams. The law exam, the accounting exam, it failed all those exams. Or mostly so, I'm overly generalizing. GPT 4 aced all those exams. That's the difference. The beauty about what is going on is how much improvement there is happening. But you're probably wondering just how's it going to look out the next 5-10 years? And I'll say it moves in phases. Think of it as the formation of the internet and how it all started. Initially, everyone said, we need routers. We need networking equipment. And Cisco had sales quadruple in the first 2 years, in 1998, 1999, and 2000. Cisco was the darling. But then we all had internet infrastructure. Then it came to Microsoft and the technology companies that had the data and the analytics, and they built out the operating system and the software on top. And that's what's dominating the companies today. So when you think about AI, we're in the gold rush of what's known as the hardware phase. We're going to exit that in the next few years. Is NVIDIA going to have a great year next year? I'm sure the results will remain pretty strong. Is it priced for that? Probably. So the market's always forward-looking. So my job isn't to read the news today, it's to predict what's going to be in the newspapers 5 years down the road. And what I predict will happen in the next 5 and next 10 years for artificial intelligence is we're finally going to come up with a product that is useful for all of us. So right now, if you're a creative artist and you need help writing a song, AI can help you out with that, sure. But who wants to be the next Celine Dion? I mean, maybe not me anyway, but I'm sure some people are. But what is relevant to most of us? It's not Photoshop, where the creative art and it's faster to do all that. It's not Spotify and becoming your own artist. It's productivity. So when you're looking out over the next few years, I want you to keep a close eye on a product called Microsoft Copilot. You'll start hearing about it in the next 6, 12, 18 months when Microsoft decides to go official with the whole strategy and more mass market. They're going to charge you almost $30 a month to use the service. So if you have Microsoft Teams, what's known as the Office 365 bundle, the E3 or the E5, Microsoft charges you different levels for different tiers. This is extra. This is an extra $30 because you're getting access to what's basically, remember that little paper clip in Microsoft Word 98?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, Clippy, I think it was called Clippy. This time, Clippy is going to be useful. So it can take a PowerPoint deck that you have from 6 months ago, and you just type and say, I want you to update this, and it'll do it. That's what some of the test data shows. The question will be, will hundreds of millions of people pay $30 a month for that extra service? So AI has a lot of potential, but what AI is missing today is the opportunity to improve our lives in a tangible sense. We can talk about the abstract things like how it's going to help us go to personalized medicine with the human genome that we cracked years ago. Now we can do to cell therapy, gene therapy, hormone therapy in a way we've never done before. But that's still in the lab, that's still clinical, that's still years away. We can talk about how supercomputers are going to take a far bigger role and code breaking and all those things, but that's abstract. That's in a lab somewhere. Copilot, I'm hoping, and I bet, is going to be the big test to see, is the consumer ready to pay for artificial intelligence? And as investors, that's all we care about.
Yeah. Then you were predicting about AI and those kind of things. Now, I have to take one break, a small break. We'll take break. And after that, I want your prediction for 2024 also, okay, how the economy will go. So we'll take a small break and we'll come back. Please keep watching.